I'm telling you now, it is not what you think. Some of you probably looked at this thumbnail and thought, oh, Max must have found one of Kishimoto's early works. Not even close. At least, not in the way you think. What if I told you that Masashi Kishimoto, creator of Naruto, has a twin brother? Yep, I'm not kidding, this isn't a troll, I'm being quite serious. In fact, just to show you how obscure this information is, I asked my pseudo little brother, who's a huge Naruto fan by the way, and this is what he had to say.
He does?
Yeah, he has a twin brother.
Does he make manga also, or?
Huh?
Does he make manga also, or no?
Yes, the answer is yes. Quite a few actually, but I'm only going to talk about his first work, so I highly recommend checking out this video made by Pirate Diaries as they delve into the history and lore surrounding his manga career, compared to me, who will only provide the Spark Notes version. So what manga am I gonna dive into? Well, it's the one that inspired me to create a YouTube channel in the first place, about sharing my thoughts on manga and bringing some obscure series to light. And its name is called 666 Satan. Or at least that's what it's called in every other country. Here in the US, because we have pearl-clutching mothers who will have a heart attack if the number 666 appear in media that is geared towards children, even though 666 have been proven not to be related to Satan, and instead it relates to a beast or a man, depending on your interpretation, the manga was renamed to Oh Parts Hunter. But I'm not calling it that because it sounds stupid, so I'm just gonna stick to its original title. Now, with that out of the way, let's get started with... The manga was created by Seishi Kishimoto, and before some of you type in the comments talking about plagiarism, let me remind you of what I said a minute ago.
Flashback.
Twin brother. So it's easy to guess he has the same artistic drive like his brother. Hell, even as kids, the two share similar interests and would often help each other develop their own art styles, much to Seishi's detriment later in life. Honestly, I feel bad for the guy, as he's unironically the Sasuke to Masashi's Naruto, and couldn't escape his brother's shadow by the time this manga was first published. The plagiarism accusations were so bad that Masashi had to make a public statement telling his fans to quit it, and Seishi himself noted in the first page of the manga, "In fan letters, I'm often asked about..." I mean, it's written in all of them. "Your drawings are very similar to those of Kishimoto Mashi-sensei, who draws Naruto in another shonen magazine." Some of them even use that terrible word, plagiarism. That's probably because I'm his younger twin brother, and since we were little, we received the same influences. Well, our faces are very similar too. In short, please note I'm more handsome, that's all. I feel like Rice Leo reading this out loud. But he's right, despite similarities to the main character and a few plot threads here and there, this manga proves it's not a carbon copy people will try to accuse it of being. 666 Satan was published in Square Enix Gagan Comics from August 11, 2001 to December 12, 2007, releasing 19 volumes or 76 chapters in all. The first chapter begins with a quote from the Book of Revelation detailing how the number 666 correlates to what I said earlier about how it relates to a beast or man. We get some small exposition about how this world has an ancient civilization that fell into ruin and left behind this legacy in the form of O-Parts, and that one day in the future, conflicts involving O-Parts might lead humanity towards extinction once again. It then cuts to one of our main characters, Ruby Crescent, who is out to explore some ruins until she gets startled by a giant turtle and almost falls to her death, before she's saved by a stranger. This stranger is our other main character, Geoffried, who, after saving Ruby from the giant turtle, reveals that his dream is world domination. You know, as you do. Ruby treats Geo to a meal at Stakes and explains why she was out exploring the ruins. She reveals she's following in her father's footsteps as a treasure hunter, hoping to one day find him and legendary O-Parts after he left her with some mutual friends and a jade pendant. She also gives some quick exposition about how old parts work, and the people who can wield them are called old part tacticians, or OPTs for short. There's even a rumor about a supposed monster that was so scary that it caused 10 OTPs to harm themselves using their own old parts. And they all said the same thing. The number 666 are written across its forehead, and its name is Satan. Gee, I wonder who's this supposed monster is going to be. But lunchtime is interrupted by a man who is out to capture Ruby. Just like another archaeologist I know, Ruby isn't your average treasure hunter, as her knowledge and talent for reading ancient inscriptions makes her the perfect target to be kidnapped and used for nefarious means. And after an intense chase scene, Ruby hires Gio to be her bodyguard while she goes to explore some ruins. The two have some bonding moments while exploring, and then it cuts to Gio's backstory where the Naruto comparisons come into play. He was isolated from everyone due to a curse inside him, including the one person he thought he could trust, causing him to only rely on himself and money and intentionally pushing people away if they got close. Like what he did with Ruby after she suggested they become friends. It's only when he finds out that Ruby is the same as him after her father passed away that he changes his mind and rescues Ruby from Satan, who, not surprisingly, is an OTP posing as a faker, but Gio being an OTP himself evens the playing field. If you haven't already guessed it by now, Gio is revealed to be the real Satan everybody was talking about, existing as Gio's dark side, similar to Kurama. However, unlike in the early stages of Naruto, Gio is somewhat aware of Satan, as he knows whenever he's unconscious, something bad usually happens, and it was the voice that preyed on Gio's desire for love and acceptance. After Satan defeats his carbon copy and is forced back to Gio decides to follow Ruby around under the pretense that she'll pay him back for his bodyguard duties, when in reality, he considers her his friend and doesn't want her to be left alone. So the two then head to wherever the next journey takes them. And that's chapter 1. Honestly, not too bad. The manga reminds me of old school Dragon Ball where Kid Goku was going on adventures with Bulma. And as the manga goes along, there are some interesting developments in real life influences that I believe are Seishi's bread and butter, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I move on to the next segment, as always, since I'm discussing the entire manga, there will be spoilers ahead. So then, let's move on to... Let's start with Gio. There are a few differences in his character that make him stand out a bit from becoming a full-on Naruto clone. Mostly it has to do with his obsession with money and being a competent fighter. While he might seem greedy and selfish, he does care about his friends and starts to warm up to people throughout the manga. He just doesn't show it well because of his awkwardness and his tendency to blame other factors or hide his feelings. His character is pretty simple and to the point, although the initial concept for him could have gone in an interesting direction. Then we have Ruby. She has a strong sense of determination to keep moving forward as she realizes that crying and running away from her problems won't solve anything. Her willingness to extend kindness towards Gio and her mutual understanding of loneliness form a close bond with him. And as her search for legendary O parts goes along, she slowly uncovers the truth behind her father and her origins. But that's something I'll have to get into later. As for the other characters that will make their appearances in the manga, I'll give a brief introduction when it comes to them. For now, let's continue on with... As I stated before, the start of the manga reminds me of old school Dragon Ball, as the next batch of chapters sets the foundations with simple adventures, or world building, and quickly establishes who Gio is. From how he got the dream of world domination for passing by at a bar, to receiving and naming his boomerang weapon after his master, who is a talking wolf. Gio also encounters his childhood friend Jin, who, upon learning that it wasn't Gio who killed his parents but rather Satan, let go of his hatred towards Gio and protected him when it mattered. Spoiler alert, he's not dead, if it wasn't obvious from the lack of a body, and will make his return in an upcoming arc. Things only start to shift in chapter 7 after Gio and Ruby stop by in a smokeside town called Entotsu City to stock up on supplies for the next trip. This city has everything. Steam trains, coal mines, the fact that you can't leave this city. And the mayor, who looks like Greedo's diseased off-bred cousin, telling the citizens they can relax, knowing that the government is protecting them. Well, it's clear to me that this place sucks, as one of the citizens also bluntly explains to our group here that ever since the Mayor Jaga rose to power, he's been using the CS government's protection as an excuse for them to abuse their power and force the people into slave labor by mining old parts to protect them from the Zenom organization, a criminal organization that deals with illegal old parts and a group that later plays a major part in the manga. So it doesn't matter if it's a guard, Zenom, or the government, to the everyday person, it's all the same. We actually saw a part of Stia in one of the earlier chapters featuring this 2000 pre-best and hot topic over here, but I'm gonna hold off on them for a while until it becomes relevant in the story, so put a pin on this. Gio and Ruby then get spotted by a couple of soldiers, causing them to split up in the fog, leading to Gio saving a small girl named Mary, and Ruby getting caught and taken to Jaga's mansion. After making sure Mary was safe, Gio realizes his mistake of not looking after the one person he's supposed to protect and heads off to find her. This is where we get our introduction to our next main character who rounds up our Shonen trio group here, Ball. Ball is... well, he's something. He's the jokester of the group who's a bit of a show-off, admires OPTs, and has an obsession with round things. Damn, his parents must have had the gift of foresight for that last one if they were okay with naming their son Ball of all things. After Mary cleared up a misunderstanding between the two with her being revealed to be Ball's younger sister, Gio's led to the resistance and its leader. The leader reveals they have a plan to sneak into the mansion to gather information, but it unfortunately takes time. Time that Gio does not have, as he believes Ruby is already kidnapped, so he and Ball team up to infiltrate the mansion. There, they discovered that Jaga has been teaming up with Zenom this whole time.
Saw it coming.
And Ruby is held up in a dungeon. Any chance of a rescue mission gets cut short when one of the members of Zenom named Wise attacks Gio, leading to the two escaping with Gio's weapon Zero getting broken during the escape. The only hope Gio has now for his weapon to be restored is to journey far into the city to search for an OPT inspector named Kieran. So with Ball being reluctantly dragged along with him, the two go on a mini-adventure, eventually discovering Kieran's residence and Kieran himself. Kieran is like one of those teacher or mentor figures who would bend over backwards to help their students while also trolling them at the same time. He agrees to mend Gio's weapon, and to help pass the time while his weapon is being fixed, he challenges Gio and Ball to a simple game of catching his dog Jajamaru. Easier said than done since Jajamaru is a OPT, but at least we get a more description of what O parts and OPTs are. I've already mentioned that O parts are remnants of an old civilization, and in this world, they're graded in rank based on their weapons and the strength of that power, with the highest being SS, which is like having the power of several nuclear warheads, to E, which is similar to a toy pea shooter you can get from your local dollar store. However, just having a high rank O part doesn't help you in the long run. Sure, you might get a boost in power, but what really determines an O part's strength is an OTP's growth, skill, and usage over their spirit, as an O part's power isn't always stable despite being calculated from its rank. So yes, dear viewer, you can defeat Phantom from DMC with 2 pistols and a dream. Sorry about that, I've been getting into Devil May Cry lately. Moving on. One of the ways that separates OPTs from normal people is their ability to release spirit, or Chi, or aura, or chakra, or whatever. Basically, OPTs draw upon their life force to release from their body and send it to the O part where they can use its effect. While the boys are going through their training montage, Ruby, who is still stuck in the dungeon, coincidentally gets shackled with the one person who can help her, an old woman named Amitabha. She's an OPT and an old colleague of Ruby's father, Jack, as they used to be part of the government's relic hunting squadron, and casually reveals that Ruby's pendant is an S-Class O part. She also reveals more lore surrounding the Stia government and OPTs, like how there's only a small percentage of them in the world, which I highly doubt, considering everyone who's relevant in the story so far and in the future is either going to be an OPT or have an ability. Amitabha uses some of the pendant's power to break her and Ruby out of the dungeon, just in time to see this slug creature bulldozing its way through the city. So, a couple of things here. That slug thing is Mikasis, the Opar Jaga was looking for and forcing the citizens to dig up this whole time. Once Jaga sits in the cockpit, this god-complex tyrant, powered by spirited organs, has the perfect weapon he needs to take over the world. Only for that to backfire when he gets absorbed by Mikasis himself. I guess it is true what they say about pride cometh before the fall. Yeah, it's not surprising that Zenom double-crossed Jaga by secretly injecting drugs into his system, making way for the real pilot of Mikasis, Wise. You know, I thought having your own stand to fight an aura farm with would be enough for him, but I guess world domination works too. Geo, Ball, and Kieran heard the rumbling where they were and rushed back to town with Geo gaining an improved 0, and Ball discovering he's an OPT, further proving my point about OTPs not being rare. It's a race against time as everyone has their own agenda. Ruby trying to find Geo, the Resistance breaking into the mansion to broadcast the truth about Jaga, Geo finding Wise to kick his ass, and Ball learning to stand up for himself and defeating his first opponent as an OPT. Eventually, everyone reconvened and worked together to take down Wise. However, Mikas's power was getting too much for Geo, causing him to almost be absorbed by it. That's where he meets Satan for the first time, who convinces him to form a contract with him to gain more power. Quite literally a deal with the devil. The pact is sealed, and Geo gains another ability to absorb energy at the cost of losing control of Satan. With this newfound power, Geo breaks out of Mikas's hold, defeats Wise, and liberates the fog from the city. Afterwards, the leader of the Resistance thanks Geo and Ruby for their help in saving the city, and Ball decides to tag along with them to become a stronger OPT. Originally, the plan was to continue exploring more ruins. However, Kieran shows up giving them mindful advice since the current events drew the attention of both the Sia government and Zenom, and relays a message from Amitabha to find a man named Wick who has a connection with Ruby's dad. And it's the next part of this journey. When they get there, Wick often displays a gruff, cranky, yet soft side to the kids, especially Geo, who has never experienced parental love and forms an attachment towards him and his wife Basil. The group mostly spends their days working as Wick's assistants, renovating the ruins he's exploring. It's during one of these explorations that they took a wrong turn and came across this. Alright, this is the part where I believe Senshi really shines in his writing, so if you don't mind me nerding out for a bit, the engraving details the history of the world, with the center of it all being the Tree of Kabala, which has real-life ties with Jewish mysticism. Considering I'm a fan of anything relating to history or other cultural mythology, this absolutely tickled my brain when I first read the manga, and it's something I've noticed in other Seishi's work in preparation for this video. The dude really did his homework researching topics for his manga. Not to say other mangaka or artists don't do this as well, but what I'm impressed by is taking creative liberties on what is probably an obscure part of Judaism and incorporating it into your story to make it interesting, since mangakas usually lean towards their own folklore. For example, in the manga, there are two pieces of Kabbalah called the Light and Dark Kabbalah respectively, with each having 10 inscribed names representing either humanity's best or worst attributes. Similar to the Kabbalah belief that 10 vessels were created from God's infinite light. Plus, there's an upcoming fight that best utilizes its influence creatively, but I'll save that for when the time comes. All this to say, I think the Kabbalah inspiration is pretty cool, and I can't remember the last time I've read a manga that had Judeo-Christian demonology or influences for its plot. You're welcome to tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. Wick then appears, revealing he used to be part of the Stia government and adding more context regarding the ancient civilization that fell into ruin. He explains that the planet underwent a significant evolution in its ecosystem as a result of the ancient civilization's invasion after the blue planet went extinct, creating this cycle of people starting wars over old parts and the downfall of society. The most recent one being done by Alkaid's spirit, who ruled the planet and wiped out 90% of the population. Notice how it has two Kabbalahs in its hands. We then cut to both the Sia government and Zenom headquarters, showing that they each have their own piece of Kabbalah, with the Sia government having the Light Kabbalah and Zenom the Dark Kabbalah. Side note, besides Wise, the other members of Zenom had already made an appearance during the intervals when Wise spoke to them. with one informing him of the discovery of Dark Kabala, and another retrieving important information for the organization while also spying a Satan-possessed Geo. Both groups have the same goal of world domination for reasons that will be explained later, using the Kabala and gathering the necessary demon or angel recipes to complete it, which includes Satan, and since they figured out where he is, oh boy. Luckily, Geo was already out due to an earlier argument with Wick. However, when he came back, he was met with a grisly sight of Wick and Basil brutally murdered, and Geo was summoned to a fight by one of Zenom's 4 guardians, Kujaku, who is just casually revealed to be Kieran's younger brother. I'm not kidding, this reveal goes by so fast you barely have time to process it before Kujaku leaves. I don't know why he left before trying to kidnap Geo, but I guess the civil rivalry was too much for him that day. Geo then buries and says goodbye to his parental figures, vowing vengeance on Zenom, so the group now head towards the North Pole for Kabala. While taking a moment to rest and restock for supplies, they come across our next prevalent character, and I can remove that pin I mentioned earlier. This is Cross, a commander in the Stia government, and he acts as a rival of sorts to Geo. Despite his young age, he's seemingly humble and mature, not interested in ordering his subordinates around and taking the lead in battle in earlier chapters. The whole reason why he's using the government's benefits to his advantage is to have a better chance of succeeding with his goal, which is to kill Satan after he wiped out his village, including his little sister Lily. He found a lead when he sent Satan's presence during the Entotsu City arc. However, despite showing no ill will towards the people and simply wanting to ask a few questions, the citizens still have reasonable trust issues regarding the government and weren't too keen on revealing anything about Geo. So the next time we see him, it's during the group's repo vision where he saves Ruby from some bandits and has to fight with Geo despite not knowing who he truly is. The fight only stopped because Ruby interfered with her pendant shielding her from the attacks, and wait a minute, how'd she do that? She's not an OPT, and yet there were 2 instances now where the pendant activated its effects. Huh. There's something either going on with Ruby or the pendant that we don't know about yet. I mean, I know, I'm just playing along for the sake of this video. Ruby clears up the misunderstanding that had happened, and 2 groups split up to continue on their own journeys. But this won't be the last time Cross will clash with Geo. Now we approach the major turning point and some of the weaker points of the manga, the Rockbird arc. This arc is a tournament arc, and unless you don't mind this trope, since this is a shonen manga, you're gonna have a bad time. I'm pretty neutral to this, but I am gonna try my best to get through this first half for the sake of your convenience. The arc begins when the group comes across the Rockbird Tournament Festival, held every 4 years, with some of the prizes being legendary old parts. Ruby volunteers Geo and Ball to take part in the tournament, and I'll skip a majority of this part because, to be honest, I couldn't be bothered to care during these scenes in the manga. It's not bad, it's just going through the motions that I've seen in other tournament arcs. It also doesn't help that this manga shows its age when a very unique announcer shows up. This manga is lucky it wasn't published during current day, otherwise there will be nukes going off on Twitter every other week. The only thing you need to know is that the state government and Zenom sent one of their agents to capture one of the required recipes for their Kabala, and that one of the contestants carries said recipe in her body. Oh, and Jin's alive, but I already told you that, and at least he and Geo had the more interesting fights due to their life experience and passing that onto their opponent. The story starts to pick up speed towards the end of chapter 42 when, lo and behold, Kujaku teleports in to collect the demon recipe for the Kabala. Geo, understandably, gets enraged at the sight of him and is about to be taken over by Satan until Ruby calms him down. Unfortunately, that gesture exposed Geo's biggest weakness to someone who is watching the tournament above and is the de facto leader of Rockbird, Icarus, the vessel for Beelzebub. He kidnaps Ruby and takes her to the top layer, and I'm gonna try my best to decipher what's going on because the digital scan I got for this video doesn't have the best qualities, so bear with me. From what I could gather, and after rereading it a couple of times, Icarus explains that Kabala is a weapon, no surprise there, and to activate it, one must gather the demons and angels of both Kabalas and combine them to initiate what is essentially the Big Bang on the planet. and that the whole tournament was a trap to lure OPTs here with the promise of legendary O parts, only for that to be a way for Icarus to gather information, and the winner gets turned into a battery that Icarus needs to replace every 4 years. And now, with Satan here, he plans to use Ruby as a bargaining chip to corrupt Geo and turn him into Satan and use his power to ascend into godhood. Yeah, you do that, Icarus. I'm sure something called the Sun won't kill you in the next several chapters. Geo finally arrives. Icarus taunts Geo to turning into Satan. Geo was about to become Satan until yet again he was saved by Ruby. Then Geo asks everyone to send their spirit over to him Dragon Ball style to give him enough power to overwhelm and defeat Icarus. Icarus then gets his ironic end when he falls to the ground and is taken by Zenom to be placed inside Dark Kabala. Because Geo has been relying so much on his energy absorbing power during his fight with Icarus, he gets completely taken over by Satan and locked away in the deepest corners of his soul. Now free, Satan provokes Ruby into giving up on Geo and giving to her hatred for her father abandoning her, until Cross shows up to finish Satan once and for all. Satan remembers Cross. In fact, he's been planning on this fight happening ever since Geo met Cross, and Satan destroyed his village afterwards all those years ago. Apparently, Cross is a Jinseki, a pure soul similar to an infant, and like a real-life infant, the influences and life experiences can shape what they can become. Satan was hoping that seeing him destroy everything that he loves would cause Cross's heart to be completely consumed by hatred and turn into something he could use to his advantage. What he didn't count on was for Cross, like Jin, to let go of his hatred and turn into a freaking angel! Yeah, Cross is revealed to be the angel Metatron, practically groomed from birth to evolve into one, with Lily being a clone to act as a key to initiate Cross's latent powers. Well, we all know how that ended. In the original key in Surthurafon, I'm hoping I'm saying this right, Surthurafon Angel Jiseki that Lily was cloned from got stolen by Jack when he betrayed them years after she was made. Wait a minute. Does that mean, yes my thoughts, it means that Ruby is an angel too, and the pendant her dad gave her is the key for Cross. I like this twist so much. It would explain the instances where the pendant's effects were activated despite Ruby not being an OPT, and why Cross felt a connection with her beyond just looking like Lily. And now we reach the crux of this arc when Cross's subordinate, after several chapters of build-up, betrays him and activates their ship's what can best describe as a soul absorption laser, killing a good chunk of Rockford citizens and some of the ship's crew. Ruby also got caught up in the ship's effect as well and lets herself be absorbed by Satan after he totally promises that she can bring Geo back. Joke's on him because that's exactly what happened. In Geo's soulscape, Ruby finds him and leads him to the way to gain his body back, ultimately sacrificing herself to remain inside his soul and keep Satan at bay. And I'm sorry, but I have to include this clip because it's so similar.
Kyrie's inside me?
Cross teases his attack on Geo since he senses he has returned to his body, and the two both go on their separate ways as Rockford is crumbling down. Geo tries to reach for Ruby's body but can only grab her pendant as he falls unconscious, while Cross takes Ruby's body back to Sia and is probably having an internalized existential crisis right now. As for Ball, Kieran, and Amidaba to some extent, they escape Rockford to start their search for Geo and Ruby. But that search will take them about 4 years. Yep, we get a time skip and whoa! Holy crap, Senshi's definitely stepped up his game. His artwork at the beginning was already impressive for a first ever serialization, with many detailed wide shots and otherworldly biomechanical demon and angel designs like Satan reminiscent of Generator Rex. Now, almost 3/4 of the way through the manga, and we get to see Seishi take some of the criticism to heart, with the character designs being a little more distinct than what people accuse him of, looking less like Naruto and more something in the realm of air gear. Shout out to the two people in the back who know exactly what I'm talking about. The time skip first shows us Ball and his improved OTP skills while catching us up to speed on what the group has been doing over the past several years. Sadly, their search efforts for Geo have been scarce so far, but at least they know where Ruby is now thanks to Crash joining their team after realizing his whole life has been a lie. And it looks like both Zenom and Stia have been stepping up their game to complete their own Kabala, as Zenom launched an attack on the group's ship, causing it to fall into an isolated area. While looking for supplies, Ball comes across a girl in dire need of help, but she gets saved by the one person everyone was looking for, Geo. Gio explains that after the events of Rockbird, it was his old master Zero who rescued and took him to the ancient village of Cyclops men, the original inhabitants of the planet. You know, before the ancient civilization came in and terraformed it. The people have a special ability to open their third eye, although it's extremely rare, and Gio has been recovering and protecting the village for the past few years. He even got himself a groupie whom he saved earlier named May. However, when Ball tells him that they know where Ruby's body is and Zenom attacked the village, Gio realizes his time of staying still is over. With the blessing of the chief, Gio sets off once again, with May taking along too. Mostly because she already lost someone important to her when they left the village and doesn't want to repeat mistakes. There's a nice moment where Gio reunites with the rest of the group and reaches a mutual understanding with Cross, knowing that the second Ruby returns to her body, Satan might take control and Cross might have to put him down before that happens. When they get to Stia's space to rescue Ruby, trouble already finds them as multiple obstacle foes block their path, and they have to split up to find a way inside or defeat them. I would talk about Ball and May's fight against her brainwashed brother since it develops May and gives Ball another great character moment, but I'll let you guys figure that out for yourself. Instead, I want to highlight the fight I mentioned earlier in the video, specifically Seishi's creativity in crafting a fight that draws inspiration from Judo-Christianity. We had a glimpse of that with Icarus when he transformed into his Beelzebub form and his bug motif, but this delves deeper into that. Gio and Cross versus Michael. While different from their real-life depiction, they still retain their spiritual sense of justice over their virtue, and in this case, it's beauty. During the fight against Gio and Cross, Michael demonstrates their ability to use Judgment Shiso, which traps two individuals on opposite sides of a scale and measures the beauty of the soul. Failure to even the scales will result in disintegration. Luckily, Gio found a workaround for that problem, and even when Michael does his full transformation, he continues his obsession with beauty by disintegrating components into their natural elements. This is why I like this fight so much. It reflects on Michael's personality and virtue, offers a clever way to get past their judgment, and includes a great character moment for Cross when he states that he refused to accept his fate as a tool for Stia and wants to make his own path. It's fights like these that I wish we could have gotten more from the angels and demons of Kabala besides the ones that we know. But I will give Seishi this, he is damn good at writing plot twists, as our next review showcases that Kieran was part Cyclops this entire time, when in his fight, he releases his clan's third eye ability to program and control anything that it can see except for humans. It explains the multiple instances where he walked off attacks like they were nothing despite not being an OPT. You know, it's twists like these that I think that the final act of Naruto's war could have fared better if Seishi helped his brother out. I'm just saying, don't kill me Naruto fans, I'm just making an observation. Anyway, after defeating their opponent, Kieran and Amitabha head on the ground where the leader of the Stia government, Atamarasu Miko, resides. She gives a long speech about how she transferred her consciousness into the flying ship Opart Shin, and how she desires a world in which she is immortal and all thoughts are unified on her own. But Gio must have been impatient as I was at that moment because he destroyed Miko's robot body to shut her up. With nothing else needed in their way and a little help from Cross, Gio can finally bring Ruby home and return her soul to her body. Despite learning that she's an angel and hasn't moved her body in almost half a decade, Ruby surprisingly adapts to her situation and is able to use her angel powers to help the group out on their ship. But she still has some qualms about her father, and we get a nice small moment from Gio where he tells her that blood ties don't matter when it comes to the bonds of family, reflecting on his bond with Wick and Basil. So now we approach the endgame of the manga, and just like I did with the Rockbird arc, I'm going to skip the next several chapters. The game does find Zenom's headquarters and goes through a Laboon style level of dungeons. However, it involves characters that, I'll admit, I've never mentioned until now, but that's because they barely made a lasting impact. For example, the rest of Zenom's 4 guardians sort of came and went during the Rockbird arc. I can't for the life of me remember the name of this chick, and while we do get to see what Jin was up to during the time skip, again, I'll leave that up to you to discover this B-plot starring Jin and the companions he made. There is one fight I want to mention, and that's the fight between Kieran and Kujaku, which might have some level of projection on Seishi's part. Maybe, possibly, just a little bit. I say this because their backstory reveals that Kujaku has always been jealous of his older brother's third eye ability and of their father's praise for their swordsmanship ever since they were kids. And no matter what he did or how hard he trained, he still couldn't escape his brother's shadow. That's when he stumbled upon a demon nexus and used its power in the hopes of appeasing his father, and you can see where this is heading. Even though Kajaku killed their father, Kirin always thought of them as equals. It's why he severed one of his eyes and showed Kajaku that their father had always believed in him in what is a pretty emotional scene. But we have reached the climax now, and in another shocking twist, mostly on Ruby's end, it gets revealed that the leader of the Zenom Syndicate is none other than Jack Crescent. He explains that he started Zenom as a way to counteract Miko's plan to mold the planet into her own image, and knew that killing her wouldn't be so easy. And he's proven right when, not surprisingly, Miko is still alive, sneaking her way into gathering the rest of the remaining parts to commence Armageddon on Shin. Shin then proceeds to absorb all the angels and demons present, including Cross, Ruby, and Jack, who is shown to be the vessel for Beelphegor and Asmodeus. What he said. At least while they're being absorbed, the father and daughter can have a heart-to-heart moment. Jack shows Ruby his memories of using the demon's power to rescue Ruby because she reminds him of a daughter he lost, and knew that one day he had to separate himself from her because she was an angel. The two reconcile their bond as Miko prepares to absorb all life on the planet and destroy it, aiming to achieve her goal of unifying all thoughts. Gio tries to hold off for as long as he can, but realizes that the fight against Miko can only be done internally, so he lets himself be absorbed and finish Miko once and for all. Defeating her was the easy part. It's what comes after that is a big issue, and you guessed it, it's Satan, or as he prefers to be called, Lucifer. And one more big shocking twist. Lucifer reveals that he lived on a planet called Eden and was one of the 72 scientists in the organization known as Solomon, which sought to understand the greater secrets of the universe by following the breakdown of all the energy of existence. So they created the Kabala to control the energy, but when Lucifer tried to take the power for himself, two scientists named Adam and Eve stopped him by destroying his body, and his consciousness was sealed within the Kabbalah's freedom program, which took the form of a young human named Geo Freed. The biblical references go crazy for this last chapter. And now that he's inside Shin, he plans on starting a new Armageddon to swallow the planet to gain energy and reign over the next planet with his newly materialized body. But with everyone's help on the planet, Geo was able to reverse absorb Lucifer and seal him forever. Even though Lucy's gone, the Armageddon program is still active, so Geo plans to take Shin to a planet where no life exists and says goodbye to his friends. I don't know why he doesn't try to overwrite the program, but at least he gets to fulfill his wish of world domination. And despite disappearing from the world, his and everyone who was a part of Kabala like Ruby, memory still lives on in the people who knew them. Well, I think it's time to wrap this video up. Ultimately, I would say that 666 Satan is fine for what it is. It's definitely a product of its time, there's no mistake about that, and there are one too many characters for my liking that it felt like Seishi was struggling to give them enough screen time. But it has some great things about it, like the religious inspiration, some emotional moments, and really good effective plot twists. It's a manga that I recommend checking out at least once, and I hope one day Seishi can create a manga that can stand out on its own 2 feet. For a manga that made me curious enough to explore and discover different manga that people don't talk about as much, it's not too bad. And if you read the manga already, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Until then, thanks for watching everyone. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell for more my manga related content. I hope you have a decent day and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Take a deep breath, deep breath, deep breath, deep breath. Let it go, let it out, let it go, let it out. Take a deep breath, deep breath.